Why don't I start saying welcome to the new Capitol Jewish Museum. It's obviously a building still in construction, officially to open June 2023. And as I mentioned earlier, you're the first speaker in the building, which to me seemed so fitting. The museum is dedicated to the intersection of American Judaism and American democracy. And I can't think of anyone who more represents that intersection than Ambassador Alfred Moses.
Thank you, Esther.
So I'm not sure how to start describing you because I read your bios and there's so many. I'm not going to cover everything. It would be impossible. But you were born in Baltimore and then came to Washington for law school.
No, I came here in the Navy.
You came in the Navy. Okay. And then ultimately you stayed in Washington.
Correct.
You built your career here as a diplomat, as a lawyer. Professionally, you helped start Promontory, a global financial group. You were a partner and now senior counsel in the law firm of Covington and Burling. But what we really want to talk about is your distinguished career in public service. You were the ambassador to Romania. You served as President Clinton's special envoy for the Cyprus conflict. You were special counsel to President Carter. And in the national and international arena, you've been national president of the American Jewish Committee, chair of UN Watch, which is in Geneva, I believe.
Yes.
Chair of the International Board of the Institute for National Security Studies in Tel Aviv.
Correct.
And of particular interest to us today is that you're the honorary chair of ANU, the Museum of the Jewish People in Israel. And when I was in Israel earlier this year, and of course I visited ANU and had a wonderful tour, and we're going to look for opportunities where we can partner together. I think it's just such a natural here in the nation's capital.
I agree.
But of course, I saw the Moses Family Hall of historic synagogues around the world. And here we are today in our historic synagogue. And what I'd like to do is start by having you talk to us about Romania, but the tie to the Jewish world there, which you wrote about in Bucharest Diary, which I've read twice. And you were appointed ambassador to Romania, and most ambassadors are either foreign service officers or big donors. And what was it you were doing there, and particularly the connection to the Romanian Jews?
Delighted to answer. Delighted to be with you, Esther. You've done so many things that are worthwhile in our community. Really built, spiritually speaking, the Sixth and I.
Thank you.
Call it synagogue, but it's much more than that. Romania. My contact with Romania was solely Jewish. I went there in 1976, visited the Jewish community, was asked by young Jewish Romanians to help them get out of Romania.
What took you there? What motivated you to go?
I went, headed a delegation from the American Jewish Committee. I spent 3 or 4 days in Romania. I was very taken with the plight of the Jewish community. There were about 50,000 Jews still in Romania. Community had been 800,000 before the war. 200,000 did not survive. They went to Auschwitz and they were killed in Transylvania, other parts of Romania, Transnistria. But 50,000 were still there. They were out of work for the most part, at least working for the government. This was a communist country. When the young men came up to me and asked me to help, I did. We were able to get thousands of Jews out of Romania. They all went to Israel. We were able to do that by organizing a cottage industry in the United States, whereby we controlled, at least we thought we did, and the Romanian government thought we did, most favored nation tariff status for Romania. As long as we held that control over the future of the lower tariffs for Romania, we were in a position to impose some conditions on Romania, and the conditions were that their Jews go to Israel. As a result, we got thousands of Jews out. One of the persons who worked with me in the Carter White House went back to state. He was a foreign service officer. He later became the executive secretary of the department, and it was he who arranged for me to be ambassador. He persuaded the secretary and others in the department that Moses knew something about Romania. So I was nominated or proposed by the State Department and I was confirmed unanimously. Spent the next 3 years in Romania helping to strengthen, fortify democracy, free enterprise in Romania, and strengthen the bilateral relationship between our two countries. That ended up when I left with the announcement of a strategic partnership between Romania and the United States, which will be celebrated December 1 of this year, the 25th anniversary. So it was a worthwhile undertaking. I've been to Romania many, many times. I met with communist dictator Nicolae Ceausescu on many occasions, all on behalf of the Jewish community of Romania. So I can tell you, Esther, when people ask me, what has it been like as a Jew in the United States? My answer is everything I've done is not despite the fact I'm Jewish, but because I'm Jewish.
That's a very powerful statement. Have you kept in touch with anybody in Romania or some of the Romanian Jews that...
There are very few Romanian Jews left. I was very close to the late Chief Rabbi Moses Rosen. After he died, of course, I remained in contact with them. I remained in touch with the persons I knew when I was in Romania, the president, Jan Iliescu, his successor, Emil Constantinescu, his successor, Traian Băsescu, the president of the National Bank of Romania, Mugur Izărescu. The answer in a word is yes.
And I understand...
And I also stayed in touch with the foreign service officers who work within the embassy, a wonderful group.
I understand you were the only American to get a special recognition from the Romanian government.
Well, I did get a prize. I think others have since. I was the first, and for a long time the only. Yes, President Iliescu conferred that upon me. I believe others have received it since. I'm not quite sure.
Let's just say that you were it.
If no one objects, we'll
No
accept
one
it.
here is going to object. I mean, here you are it.
Okay, good.
Um,
I can tell you I'm the only Jewish recipient.
I bet that's true. So let's talk a little about museums. We're sitting here in this historic sanctuary. I know you have a passion for museums. You were involved in ANU for many years, before when it was the Museum of the Jewish,
It was diaspora.
the Diaspora Museum.
Benefit,
And you continue your involvement and now as honorary chair. And I know you have a passion for lots of museums. I remember going into the National Gallery to see
That's
some
right.
photography show, and it says sponsored by Albert and Fern Moses. I have a book called The Last Folio, and I thought, which was a fascinating book. I saw it somewhere, I bought it, and then I'm flipping through it, and it was another project.
That's correct. Well, my wife and her former husband, who died, they had a gallery in New York, a photograph gallery, photography gallery. And the two of them were pioneers in American photography, in making it accessible and popular. And when I came in close contact with the National Gallery, my thought was that we would endow a photography collection department, and we were able to do that. It's in the name of my wife, Vernon Shad, and myself. And that is rather significant. I think it's by far the largest individual grant, maybe that the gallery has ever received. In any event, it does support the photography collection and department at the National Gallery. Beta Foot-Sodai I knew of. I visited there in the 1970s. I was later approached by a very close friend who heads the American operation for what was then Beta Foot-Sod. She and others came with the idea, I suppose I contributed to it, to change the name from Beta Foot-Sod, wishes that I asked for, and somewhat
Yes.
derogatory, to the Museum of the Jewish People. It's now the Museum of the Jewish People. It has about over 100,000 square feet of exhibit space. It is magnificent. I urge all of you, if you go to Israel, go to Tel Aviv, go to the Museum of the Jewish People, and you'll spend half a day or longer, whatever you can. It tells the story of the Jewish people from the time of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And to present day world Jewry. And it is world Jewry, not simply Israel, not American Jewry, not European Jewry, world Jewry. Jews have existed throughout our globe.
Well, I was really struck when I went through it. I had seen the previous museum. And when I saw this museum, how creative it was, how embracing upward world Jewry, no matter what kind of Jew you were. And it's interactive, and that's some of what we're striving for here. You're going to see when you come back, and I look forward to walking you through the museum when it's open.
Thank you.
A lot of interactivity, a lot of activities for kids. That's the future of museums, and that's how we reach our audience, which is...
Absolutely. They have to be interactive. They have to be digital, not just sterile displays. As we say, Anu, you're part of the story.
Exactly. And you have to be open, and that's what we're going to be. We're going to be part of the story. This museum, it's unbelievable that in a city that has the third largest Jewish population in the country,
Wow.
the only museum we had was the Holocaust Museum.
Well, the Holocaust Museum is important. The Holocaust was an enormous tragedy, and we should never forget it. But it's not the future of the Jewish people. The future of the Jewish people is you, your children, your grandchildren, what you accomplish as human beings, as decent people, and as Jews, with the rich heritage which we all share.
Exactly, and that's why we feel this museum is going to be such an important addition to the Washington, not just the Jewish community, but the Washington community. I mean, one of the things about this museum is that we face outward.
You didn't mention, Esther, that when Adas Israel had its opening, President Grant was president, wasn't he?
So that is exactly what I wanted to go to. Thank you for reminding me of that. That's exactly right. When this building was opened in June 9th, 1876, and we're going to reopen June 9th, 2023, 146 years after the original dedication, President Grant came here. And what's really interesting about this, you probably know this a lot better than I do, that during the Civil War he issued Order 11.
Infamous Order 11.
The infamous Order 11.
Barring Jewish peddlers from selling to Union troops. But President Lincoln overruled them.
Right. And so but then when this building was opened, he came here to make amends to the Jewish people.
Well, General Grant, of course, I'm old, but I'm not that old. I didn't know him. He was not prejudiced. I've read his memoirs, the most amazing presidential memoirs.
Right.
They're really the gold standard of presidential memoirs. If you haven't read General Grant's memoirs, please, 2 volumes, magnificent. And he wrote them all by hand.
And it's kind of poignant with what's going on in the world and in the Jewish world to open this museum and to know that Grant came here after issuing what was a blatantly anti-Semitic order. But here we are in 2022. And I'd love to hear you talk about America now, 150 years later. We've got the elections coming. We've got anti-Semitism that we're hearing. Dana Milbank wrote an editorial in the Post this past week, and he asked if it's time for American Jews to think the unthinkable.
I don't know what the unthinkable is, because it's unthinkable I can't think about it. But we live in a great country. We should thank our parents for bringing us here, having us be born here. All of you chose your parents very wisely. I know I did. I'm very thankful that I'm here. I'm not about to think of being any place other than the United States. We have problems, of course we do, but there've always been problems. As time moves on, they recede and seem to have been in the past. We don't think of them as immediate. But if you look at history, we've always been beset by problems. I grew up in the 30s when anti-Semitism was rampant. When you could turn on your shortwave radio and hear a little wallpaper hanger named Adolf Hitler ranting and raving about the Jews. When the Bundeswehr acted in the United States, when Father Coughlin was broadcasting in Detroit, not blatantly, but outright diatribes against Jews. With Senator Bilbo from Mississippi, United States Senator on the floor of the Senate, made horrible anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic, anti-Jewish statements. So I lived through that era. I think we're basically sound. We're going through a difficult period, in part because of the dislocations economically, with the sending of jobs overseas. I know my family's business was the hat business. The hat business is gone. Clothing industry in the United States is pretty well gone. Shoes, other areas that were very prosperous when I was growing up have now gone overseas. The businesses have gone overseas and the jobs. But we're a resilient people. I think we'll come out fine. Stay the course, folks. The best is yet to be.
Oh, that is really encouraging. That's what we need to hear right now. Advice as we sit here waiting for the next election, the midterms, and as we hear this rising anti-Semitism. And it's also a reason why these museums are so important, why it's so important at ANU and here to tell our story.
Yes, we as a people have very little to apologize for. Have there been Jewish errors? Of course. We're all human. Individually and collectively, we're going to make mistakes. But we have a proud heritage. I think the standards that have been set for us by our ancestors back to biblical times are the right ones. Do what is right and just, and be a proud person. I hope that at the end of the day, we can say of ourselves, we led a decent life. We contributed to the welfare of the communities we live in, our families, our loved ones, and humanity generally. If we can say that to ourselves, that's all that we need to do. All the rest is, as my mother would say, shtush, which is Yiddish for stuyot, nonsense.
So tell us about your upbringing. What is it that helped make Al Moses?
I think I felt an obligation to carry on a family tradition. I was the only boy in my generation. I had 2 sisters and 5 women, first cousins. My family was a proud family. My great-grandfather came to this country in 1866 from England. He was a capmaker, a tailor.
From England?
Yes, he was born in Posen. He went to England as a young boy. He was apprenticed to a tailor, changed his name from Alexander, which is 18, which is important if you're Jewish. It's also high in Hebrew life. To Levy, because he's apprenticed to a tailor named Levy. He must have been talented. He had a successful business. He lost it all during the Civil War when they couldn't bring in cotton from the United States. He emigrated here, as I said, in 1866, from originally Montreal, then New York. Eventually ended up in Baltimore and started a men's hat factory that in his lifetime became the largest manufacturer of men's hats in the world. So he was enormously successful. And I, as the only boy in my generation, felt an obligation to carry on that family tradition. He was also a very traditional Jew. I grew up in a traditional Jewish family, home. We kept kosher, we were Shomerei Shabbat, observed the holidays. I wanted to carry on the 2 traditions that came down to me, which was one of being accepted in America, accepted in the sense of being part of America, and also being a traditional Jew and a proud Jew. I think I've subconsciously tried to do that, and that has probably spurred me to do what little I've done.
You've done quite a lot, and we are grateful for it. Anything else you want to tell? You would tell your children, your grandchildren that you want to tell?
Well, I wrote a piece for my grandchildren saying my beliefs. And my beliefs are simply to carry on our tradition, and to listen to the voice within us that tries to motivate us to be better people. There's great richness in what we inherited as Jews. Do not forsake it. It is, as we say, is a tree of life. To them who hold fast to it, it is a meaningful way to live.
And that's why Anu and this museum are so important in telling our story, telling the good, and sometimes we've made mistakes.
Mistakes are never, museum is important. It's a bridge from the past to the present to the future.
Exactly.
And that's the right bridge to be on.
Well, we are delighted to have you on that bridge with us here today and to bring you back when it is open and when we have a fabulous gala opening June the 9th, 146 years after General Grant, President Grant, is here dedicating this, and by the way, made a contribution to the tzedakah box. He not only stayed the whole 3 hours, he put money in the tzedakah box.
Well, you know, Grant's name before it was Grant was Goldstein. He changed it.
That's great. That's great. Oh, this is great. Thank you, Al. Is there anything else you want to add?
No, just keep going.
Yeah.
As I said earlier, the future is yet to be. I have great confidence in our country and in our people, and I should say in humanity. But it's up to us. There are no free lunches, folks. It's what we do every day that makes the difference, not only for the world in which we live, but for ourselves.
Thank you.